So instead of the first rounder that the Falcons were holding out for, they get a 2 and a 4. Here's what I would say about that. I don't blame the Falcons for trying to get a 1. I don't blame the Falcons for waiting to trade Julio Jones, hoping that a 1 becomes available when some team gets desperate. And my guess is the Falcons would have waited until even later into the offseason, perhaps even into August in training camps when some injuries happen or a team feels like this is our chance to snap into action and go for it. But that Julio's brief and a slightly bizarre appearance on FS1 the other day with Shannon Sharp probably expedited the process. I mean, if Julio Jones says on national TV, quote, "I'm out of here," I don't know how much longer you can drag your feet and then go through training camp with a guy that knows he's not going to be around. So that probably caused the Falcons to have to make a deal now, and I'm not sure a 2 and a 4 gets the deal done had Julio not said what he said in FS1, because my guess is a 2 and a 4 was probably out there before for Julio Jones, and the Falcons said no. So I don't blame the Falcons for trying to get a 1. I never thought he was worth a 1, and I never thought a team would give up a 1. Which is why when Julio Jones said what he said in FS1, and it was, okay, who's going to come get him? Uh-oh, here's Bill Belichick to come get him. I said, the Patriots aren't giving up a first-round draft pick for Julio Jones. No way. It's not happening. And, of course, they didn't, because that would have been far too much of a price to pay. Now, a 2 and a 4 for the Titans. I also don't think that's too much to give up. He's not worth a first. I hesitate in a second, but, okay, a 2 and a 4 I can live with, because Julio Jones is going to a Tennessee Titans team that feels as though they're close to bursting through. And, of course, they should, considering they made the playoffs 2 years in a row, double-digit wins back-to-back seasons, AFC Championship game appearance two seasons ago, and last year they went 11-5. And for Tennessee, I mean, you think about how it fits. It fits because it's a run-first offense that complements its running back, Derrick Henry, with big play in the passing game. So you're not leaning on Julio Jones to have a 1,000-yard season, 1,100 yards, 80 catches, because that's probably not what he is anymore. So I was always going to be hesitant on a team that really felt, okay, Julio Jones has to make our passing game this much better, has to be our number one, has to make our quarterback this much better. It's a good fit because when you got a back in his prime like Derrick Henry that just ran for 2,000 yards, you want to run the football. But Julio becomes a complement to that. So I think it makes sense from all sides. You get a second rounder from the Falcons or for the Falcons, and the Titans get what amounts to be a third option of the offense because Derrick Henry is the number one option. And your number two option is going to be A.J. Brown, who is a blossoming starred wide receiver. He's only in his third year, but he has proven that he's got back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. On a run-first team, Brown's got really big play potential. And for the Titans and a veteran quarterback like Ryan Tannehill, I mean, Tannehill must feel like he died and went to heaven. Every day he must wake up and be like, wow, how'd this happen? Because Tannehill is scuffling around with the Miami Dolphins, and he's being seen as an average, mediocre quarterback that can't get you over the hump and is probably going to be a lifetime backup after he leaves Miami. And the Dolphins are still searching for their franchise QB. And Ryan Tannehill gets traded to the Tennessee Titans and suddenly has a competent organization, a competent head coach, a great running back, and is constantly being given tools in the offensive passing game, and he has resurrected his career. So what a boon to Tannehill as well in getting Julio Jones with A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry to hand off to. The Titans are very interesting. That AFC South is really interesting. The Colts may or may not be the favorites. If they were before this deal, the Titans are right there neck and neck. So the Colts and the Titans are going to battle it out at the top of this division. Then you have a super interesting team with Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, who will absolutely be better than their 1-15 last year. And with Trevor Lawrence, who knows what the limit is? The sky could be the limit, what the ceiling is in the next 3 to 5 seasons. And you have a Houston Texans organization that is probably unlikely to have Deshaun Watson play quarterback for them ever again. So they're in the middle of a total tear-down rebuild. But Watson's got to go somewhere at some point in time. So what do they get back for a star in this NFL that has had unbelievably crazy legal problems? So that division's always interesting, sometimes for the worst reasons. Now it's interesting for a lot of good reasons, and that's the Colts and the Titans are two very good football teams, neck and neck. But I like this deal from both standpoints. I mean, if I'm the Falcons, I wanted a 1. If I'm a Falcons fan, I wanted a first-rounder. Seemed highly unlikely, so you get a second-rounder and a fourth-rounder. That's good for Julio, and the Titans add a guy that thankfully I don't think they're going to expect him to do something that he can't do. Julio's a good 2 at this point in his career. He's a really good 2 for a run-first team, and that's where he goes in Tennessee. I think the fit works, Mraz. I don't really see a downside. I don't really think the Titans gave up too much to get him either, so I think this is a win in all directions.
I think this is a complete win for them because the Tennessee Titans have been knocking on the door now for 2 straight years, DA. And this offseason, you can make the argument of any of the playoff teams from last year. The Titans have had the worst offseason, a lot of cap concerns. They lost all 3 of their top cornerbacks, whether it be Malcolm Butler, Dory Jackson, Desmond King. Pass rush, they upgraded with Bud Dupree, but even on offense, DA, yes, they have A.J. Brown, they have Derrick Henry, but this is a team that now has lost Adam Humphries, Corey Davis, Khalif Raymond, Jonnu Smith. That's a lot of weapons for Ryan Tannehill that they didn't really do a great job of addressing until they got Julio Jones. And while he might be getting older, you're right, A.J. Brown has emerged as the number 1. He's not going to be leaned on for that. And if Julio Jones isn't facing double coverage and Ryan Tannehill can go up and over the top for them while the box is being stacked against Derrick Henry, that could be a game changer for this Titans offense. And suddenly this Titan team might be more offense first than defense first since they have so much they've lost in that secondary.
Interesting also that Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator in Tennessee with the Titans. Ends up taking the Falcons' job. Falcons end up trading Julio Jones back to his former team. So in the AFC South, what do you think? Colts or Titans as the favorites this year?
I'm going to still lean Titans because that just comes from my lack of trust in Carson Wentz. I think just putting Carson Wentz with Frank Reich and everybody sprinkling it about and thinking everything's just going to be fine, I can't do that. I can't make that leap yet because I'm not sure we'll ever see the Carson Wentz we once saw. It's obviously a ready-made team, and they were with Phillip Rivers. But I could make the case they actually got worse at quarterback for how little I trust Carson Wentz. The Titans are there. Derrick Henry's still in his prime. Yes, I mentioned all the losses they have, but their offense, I think, will be significantly better. I will lean Tennessee as my favorite over Indy.
I'm going to lean Indy because of their defense. I trust their defense. I trust that starting 11. I'm with you on Carson Wentz. I mean, if it doesn't happen in Indianapolis, it's never going to happen. And I don't know if Wentz can be counted on anymore to do great things. But I think overall, roster-wise, more balance, I'm going to take the Indianapolis Colts. I think here's an interesting question. Which head coach do you trust more, Vrabel or Reich?
It's got to be Vrabel, and I used to can't stand Vrabel. Like back in the 3 years ago, I thought he was an idiot for how many times he was aggressive and not aggressive. But I think Vrabel is a real stable head coach with Tennessee where, I don't know, I kind of feel like Frank Reich has steadied the ship, but I'm less high on Frank Reich than I was a couple of years ago. I've kind of flopped my places on both of those coaches.
Yeah, I like Frank Reich, but I really like Mike Vrabel. And Vrabel's last 2 seasons have proven if you give him any type of talent, he is going to end up winning games. Now, in the playoffs last year, they faltered, and they've got to get to a point where that AFC Championship game run is not the anomaly that they go to January, they get to the playoffs, and they actually win games in the playoffs regularly. But I like Vrabel better than I like Reich, but I like them both. I do think Vrabel's a little bit better overall in getting more out of his team than Reich is, although I think that they're probably two of the top 10 best coaches of the NFL, right? They're probably top 10 coaches, both of them.
I'd have to think about the full list of 10, but they're definitely both in the top half of the league. They're definitely both top 15, but I would think Vrabel's a definite top 10 coach. Reich's probably in that 10 to 15 range.
Julio Jones, Tennessee Titan. They get him for a 2 and a 4. And so Jones gets his fresh start on a contender and an offense where he doesn't have to be counted on to be the number one. Pretty good fit for him.